Hello, hello, hello. Here we go. Turning that mic down. And here we go. All right, this is exciting. We have Mark Sweet will be joining us, and we will answer all the questions that you guys have about live. Trying to warm up an audience for a 4-hour or 5-hour, and Mark has so much experience in doing warm-up, maybe in some instances when you're doing a pilot, you have to have the wherewithal to keep an audience sometimes for 6 or 7 hours going. So we'll hear how Mark does that. And Mark, let me see. Let me just check my audio. Hi, everybody. I'm seeing waves. Waves. Hello. Hello. Amy Lynn. Let me just check and make sure that, let's see. Yes. Okay. I'm getting a lot of private text at the same time. So I put up some pictures of Mark warming up the audience. So we had about 200 people, I would say, in the live audience. And we always had a pretty streamlined filming, meaning we would usually take like 3 hours, maybe 4 hours at the most to film a show. And okay, I see Mark has joined us live. Let's wave to Mark. Hello, Mark. And then he can request to join us live, and then we'll jump in with that. So we tried to film at about 3 or 4 hours, maybe less. And Friends, for example, they would film for so long that they would sometimes bring in 2 audiences. So you would have one audience, and you would have they would watch for 4 hours, and then you would see this other audience going down the lot, on the Warner Brothers lot. You'd see 200 people walking down the Warner Brothers lot, and they would be ushering in a completely new audience. And then they would keep filming. And so that, you feel bad for that. I mean, Friends is a great show, obviously, but you feel bad for that audience because they didn't see a complete filming, and also they're there for a very long time. So I'm looking to see if Mark is joining. Let me just text him. All right, there we go. Oh, hello, everybody. Hello. I guess what time is it? Well, for us in the U.S., it's pretty good time. But in Australia, it must be 4 a.m. or something. And let's see, there's Mark. At least you can catch us now. And I understand that, let's see. Hey, Mark, hold on.
Right here.
I don't know. Can you hear me? Hold on. I don't hear you, Mark. Let me just do this. Just do this. All right. Yes, there we go, Mark.
Hi.
All right. Hi, Mark. I'm plugging something in, so let me see that I can hear you. Here we go. Let's see. All right, Mark. Hello, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Now, and you can hear me fine?
Yeah, your studio looks great, by the way. The lighting.
Thank you. Yeah, we're filming some Talking Heads stuff. Oh, great. So, all right, Mark, I was just talking about the length of a filming, et cetera, but I just want to tell a brief story about when the finale of Raymond happened, and we're talking to some hardcore Raymond fans here, okay? So a lot of them saw The Last Laugh, which is a documentary about the last episode of Everybody's Raymond. They ran it on CBS before the finale. And it basically told the story of the show coming to an end. Patty Heaton loses her voice, and so we have to postpone the finale.
Correct.
And so now we're going to move it to a day that you have another show. Now, just to give the background, shows usually film on, let's say, Tuesday and Friday because you need the camera crew only for a few days, and so they're going to earn a living by working on another show. That's 100% normal. A guy like you who does warm-up,
Yes.
can do 5 shows a week?
It's 2 to 4.
2 to 4, let's say, yeah, which is a lot.
Yeah.
So the significance there is you're booked on another night
Correct.
for another show.
Correct.
And now you're so important to the show that Ray has to call up the star of the other show and say, listen, we've done 210 episodes. By the way, nobody looks bad in this story. You look good in this story. That's why I'm telling it and you can't. So Ray calls up the star of the show, says, listen, it's our big finale. People have come from all over the world. There's a CBS I mean, it's big. You can't get a bigger show than the final show of 9 years, right? So then the star says of the other show, I'd like to help you out, Ray, but he's so valuable to us. I don't want to lose him for one of our episodes. Yeah, it's season 4 for us, and it's episode 17 of season 4, but I really can't let him go.
Right.
And so now, luckily, Patty's voice does not get better, and I think we ended up filming on a Sunday, right? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly the day, but I
Yeah.
do remember it. Just magically out.
Right. Well, the important part of the story is you were free. And so here you had an entire network, 200 live studio audiences, 130 crew members, all dependent on your schedule.
Wow.
Yeah, well, it's the truth, Mark. I know you're trying to be humble, but I know you too well. So, but Mark, we're going to answer a bunch of the fans' questions,
Sure.
but I want to just go back and let's go back because a couple of people are like, do you do it for any other shows? And the number of shows you've done warm up for is, we could sit here for about 20 minutes probably and just reel off the credits and bore everybody to death. So most recently,
Right.
you're doing now what show?
Well, currently the Mom Show, and we just wrapped on Carol's second act, which I was doing last year.
Which is Patricia Heaton's show, if nobody caught it, if anybody caught it.
Other show. And, the big show we just finished was The Big Bang Theory, which went for 12 years. And that was a wonderful experience.
And you did every episode effectively of The Big Bang Theory.
Every single episode of The Big Bang Theory.
Wow. So, so
Before
that's...
that, 2.5 Men for Chuck Lorre, and before that, Darman Greg, and Coach for 9 years, and the list goes on.
Yeah. So then let's go back to the beginning because you started out doing the beginning. I don't want to belabor it too long, but I just want to know because people look at that. First of all, people look at my pictures and they see you in front of the 200 people. And a lot of people are like, I didn't realize that you had a live audience, A, B, that many people, C, that you shot it on a sound stage also. Right. And what's interesting is I've had a couple of comments like, you didn't shoot it on a sound stage because you shot in so many different locations. So where else did you shoot? And it's, for Raymond especially, it was 99% on a sound stage. But I think, I want to go back to the beginning for you, Mark, but I just want to, just for people that aren't aware, when you're doing a multi-camera or 4-camera shoot, the audience is so important to the timing of the performance of the actors. And you're doing basically a live play in front of 200 people. Right. And if those people, for those of you who haven't been to a filming, those people, you don't watch it, you watch it at home in 30 minutes. You watch it being made in 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours sometimes. Right.
And I've been on shows that go beyond.
Yeah, I said that before you joined, that they can go 7-8 hours and
hours.
And Friends used to bring in a separate audience. Remember that? They would switch out their audience.
Correct.
So the importance of Mark's job is he keeps the audience. It's a tough balance between you want to entertain the audience, but you don't want them to be lost in your act. Correct. So that when they say action again, the people in the audience are going, wait, what was the scene about? What are we even watching? I want to see this guy,
Correct.
In the audience. So
Correct.
You have to be entertaining, but not too entertaining, and you have to be able to stop in a heartbeat.
Correct. Yeah, that took Uh, I had to sort of figure that out. I mean, I did start as a kid as a magician, doing kids' birthday parties, and that morphed into working for General Motors in Detroit, doing auto shows. And then they said, "Do you want to do Chicago, New York, and on and on?" It ended up doing 100 days a year for 25 years for General Motors.
And so just real briefly, your job there is what?
Well, that's kind of where I learned the technique to do warm up, because my job there, they would put you on a turntable and say, "Do shows as needed." And the show's open for 12 hours. I didn't really know what to do. And they'd say, "Well, and then weave in these product points. And they'd give you a dozen bullet points that I would weave into my magic act. So I kind of didn't know where to begin and end with it, but I got up and I realized quickly going, hey, loud to bring them in doesn't really work. But if you're quiet, and in those days people were smoking cigarettes, there were ashtrays around the turntable. It's pretty wild. So I would start quietly with a close-up magic, borrow a quarter from one guy, borrow a cigarette from another guy, and say, and I'd say, "Hey, folks, if you've never seen a cigarette go through a quarter, come on in." And before I knew it, I'd have 200 people. So I learned the technique of starting quietly, small, and not loud. DJs, you think you need to, like that excites the people, but the quiet, I think, is very effective, frankly. And then I would weave in product information. And so I learned quickly that it's not about my act. What's really paying the bills are these cars or whatever corporation I'm working for. So I kind of applied that technique to the warm-up, meaning it's not about me. The other thing I had going for me, I didn't have like an agenda after the show. "Hey guys, you want to put me on the show?" It wasn't about that at all. It was only about my performance and how good can I make this show? What can I do to help this particular show? So I'm kind of all about that. As a kid, my mom, every time I went to do a show, "Make them glad you came. Make them glad you came. Glad you came." I heard that 1,000. We still do it now as a joke. I'll say it to her and she'll say it to me. It's like an inside thing now. I actually told someone that a couple of years ago and they went, "Well, that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid, make them glad you came." But I never interpreted it that way. To me, it was just really go do a good job. It was all about the show every time.
Well, I think what you're saying, make them glad they came. It applies in a bigger scale too. Like you're making the sitcom you're making. So at the end of 30 minutes, they're like, "I'm glad I spent that 30 minutes. I feel better," or whatever I laughed.
Yeah, you hope you hope that it's just this great evening, and I try and present it in a way that it's they're part of television history. It's something bigger than just the show or just you being here. They couldn't. I try and convey that we could not do this without you, meaning the audience.
Right, which is true. Which is
so put pressure on them in a way. I kind of demand. Pay attention.
You should be paying them, Mark. I want to get to some just real quick.
Okay.
Because I want to go back more even into theory of making a show. Yeah. Well, no, there's some simple ones I just want to get out of the way, which is how do you become an audience member for a show?
An audience member? Well, I think there are three basic ways. Pretty much the audience is made up of tourists, let's say, that find it online. There's companies like Audiences Unlimited, one of the big ones at Warner Brothers, or in the Valley, I should say, meaning CBS, Radford, Warner Brothers. On the other side of the hill was Sony, and there's another company that they seem to use a lot. And then there's a lot of invited guests.
Right.
That know someone.
And I should...
VIPs, a certain level from the studio that come.
And
it's not that hard to fill up 200 seats.
Well, and we should say that as a show becomes more popular, it's easier to fill the seats. And when you get to the level of Ellen it's very hard to get a seat on Ellen.
Correct.
And if you get to Big Bang Theory towards the end of their run, it's
Right.
impossible to get a seat on there.
Yeah,
Now,
about 5 years into Big Bang Theory, real quickly, they sent us a two-paragraph, very nice note that said, seats we want to leave them for the fans. Primarily, you're allowed, I forgot, 4, 6, or 8 seats a year, and that was it. They kind of put a cap on it.
And hello from England. Hello from County Durham. That's very nice. Yeah. I remember Letterman, which was filmed in front of a live audience at the Ed Sullivan Theater, where the Beatles made their premiere in 1964. We got the thing where, David Letterman produced Everybody Loves Raymond. So we had a connection to Letterman. We had an in at Letterman, and they no longer wanted anybody from industry at all in the audience, in a good way.
And it's a very smart move, because on his daytime talk show, I remember, they probably had a lot of inside people that wanted to just come, but they don't respond like a fan or a typical audience.
So when we say industry people, that means if you're doing a stand-up comedy show and it's to showcase to appear on the show. The worst thing you can have as a performer is for someone to say, "Oh, there's a lot of industry people." What that means is the club holds 100 people, 60 of them are agents, managers, and I don't want to throw them all under the bus, but they've seen a lot. They're not looking at it as a John Q. public who's just there to laugh. They're there going, how can we package him and put him in a sitcom? Can we do this? Oh, he's represented by somebody else. Okay, they're not watching it like a normal person. So when
I think that they're not engaged, they're really not watching the show. Their mind is like somewhere else. It feels like.
Yeah.
Because in the old days when I started warm up, let's say Coach, for instance.
I thought you were going to say vaudeville, but go okay.
Well, I always say I'm the last of the vaudevillians, so that's probably true. But
so on Coach.
At Coach, you would have the president, Carrie McCluggage, different nights, not every time, but different people like in the audience, or people right from the tower there at Universal come to the show because it's their show, but they're like reading Variety and the trade papers right after the show, or they're holding scripts and reading along during the performance. And I would kind of like, hey, in a nice way, you don't need to read it, you're going to see it, or try to joke out of it. But it was my way of saying, please put the scripts down.
Yeah.
You hate to see people reading while you're performing.
So then, just getting back to how do you become a live audience member? They're looking for audiences. The first year of Everybody Loves Raymond was an unknown show.
Right.
And it wasn't even, I think we were number 83 in the ratings at the end of the year one. We were on Friday nights.
Okay.
The audience that we got, a lot of them were Marines, U.S. Marines that had been recruited.
Correct.
A lot of them there was an old age home or something right? And then so people are going, you're asking people to take out 4 hours from their day to go see a show that might be terrible.
4 hours is just for the filming. Now they have to get there, and they're 45 minutes, an hour away, and they get there 2 hours before. So they're hungry, they're tired, and they're bored.
Yes.
Well,
yes, it's perfect. It's the perfect setting for comedy.
Perfect setting for
yeah. And what's funny is when you say a part of history, I went to a filming of Seinfeld.
Correct.
And I remember, even though I was on a show, Seinfeld was such a cool show. And I remember, and it was so fascinating to me, even being on a show, to watch Jerry and to watch the scenes. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what take they're going to keep into the episodes. And when I look back, if you go on YouTube, you can find there's a clip of Desi Arnaz warming up the audience for I Love Lucy.
Interesting.
And it's so fascinating to watch because at the time, the people still had to go, we got to park, we got to go in the studio, then we got to wait on, do we want to go to this? Because we could see a movie and dinner in the same time. And But now it's such an iconic moment when you watch that video of Desi Arnaz on the stage, talking to the audience, and the warm up guy doing, which, really, that didn't exist before I Love Lucy. The live audience, which is so important to the process, the live audience filming didn't exist. There was no such thing as a live audience with 4 cameras, etc. So your job, Mark, your job didn't really exist till 1950, let's say, 51,
right,
in TV.
And well, by the way, the very first show that I ever saw filmed, I lived in Detroit. So I'm from Detroit, and I still live there. I moved out here in '81. This was in the '70s, and I'm performing for General Motors at the Texas State Fair. I met a girl piano player named, I'll think of it, and she worked on Broadway, and she was terrific. And she started mailing me like the trade papers, stuff I never saw in Detroit. It was fun. And I came out here to do a show for General Motors at the LA Convention Center. We went to see Happy Days. And at Happy Days, the warm-up guy was not what it is, or what I do, certainly, but just a guy with a clipboard, like somebody that worked on the show, and just came out, okay, well, he just kind of linked it together, but it wasn't in any way a performance.
Well, off of that, Mark, I think like everything else,
yeah,
if you grew up in the 60s, you had basically a choice of 2 sneakers, right? You had like
there you go.
Chuck Taylor sneakers, and so if someone said, I'm going to make, someday you're going to walk into a store of only sneakers, people are going to go to pick 2 sneakers. There's going to be a store of 2 sneakers.
Right.
So the evolution of the warm-up, what they realized, I think, is it's such and I hope people could get to go to a live performance of a show. When it takes 5 days to make a show,
right.
rehearsal, and then you film it in front of a live audience. You right. see the actors come alive when they hear the laughter, and their timing comes from that audience laughter. So if you have a sinking ship feeling where people are uninterested and not laughing, the actors feed off of that. And they feel like, this isn't really funny. And it's, it. Well, Mark, you of all people know that when your audience is not good, it's this vicious cycle. And you can see, I'm sure you've done some pilots that just were like pushing a rock uphill because,
look, it's all about that energy. It's all about the energy of that audience. And then when they cut, I try and take the energy of the audience and give it back to the show. Or when they cut, I take the energy and give it to the audience. And then the minute they're ready, I end whatever I'm doing, wherever it is, middle of a joke, middle of a bit, magic trick, whatever I may be in the middle of. But I have ways, just through experience, thousands of ways of letting that end. And then you take that energy from the audience and give it back to the show. And I really take pride in trying to kind of turn I won't say a bad audience, but if that energy, for whatever reason, that dynamic is not happening, and you just can feel it. You can know before the show starts I can tell if they're talking in a way and it's kind of loud, oh, this is going to be a good night. If they're totally subdued, maybe they're from different countries, portions of the audience. We get people, you mentioned the groups, the Marines, you mentioned, but they also get, drug rehab homes and some go-to places.
Yes, true.
Places that they go to get a crowd because they could pick up the phone, get 30, 40 people, boom, and we have to fill up 200 seats. It probably their life a little easier to call on these groups.
Yeah.
Than, just depending on individually. So it's, even though I could be doing a lot of the same jokes, bits, tricks, it's never the same. Every audience has everyone knows, has a different dynamic.
Yeah. And I think, Mark, because I want to move on to a couple of other things just to hear some good tidbits of your experience. But when you're writing the show and you rehearse it every week, and I see you kind of um, you see the same line performed 7 times,
Right.
okay? And you, as the writer and the producers, are sitting there watching this, and after 4 days, you're going, I don't think this is funny anymore,
You
because
start questioning.
big part of comedy is the element of surprise.
Right.
And there's no surprise after hearing it, after writing it for a month and then watching it 4 days. And then you hear that audience laughter and you're like, oh, I guess that's funny. And something that we haven't talked about, you get laughs where you were never expecting to get
That's
laughs.
the most fun. And that's what happens with a live audience. And I think right there is the magic of it. I think I don't know how to say this without sounding weird, but I've had like script supervisors. I'm glad you're here because when you're here, maybe there's a few more minutes of laughs.
Right.
Because they're actually telling the jokes and the material and the thing, and they appreciate that laugh. It's there naturally, or at least it feels natural that given evening. And I take a lot of pride in that. I mean,
Yeah.
I can, how can I help here? What can I do? How
Yeah.
do we make it funnier to funniest, better?
Yeah. And honestly, that extra 2% is the separation between good and great.
Well,
Right.
there you go. So it's just that. I'm just going for that every time, every take, everything. And I make them feel that we're going for that. So that they don't get worn out. They get, hey, we're like part of this. They're in on the joke. They're in on the show. They're part of the team. How good, how excellent. We're never going to be together like this again. How excellent can we make this night?
Yeah.
Make it important.
Yeah.
Make it something bigger than another comic in a club.
Yeah. I'm convinced, Mark. You've sold me. I'm gonna be the best guy.
Well,
The best.
yeah, but I did that. I did that. That's kind of what I conveyed to them, really. But
Yeah.
they understand that, and it's true.
Yeah. And you see it. Mark, just some random questions popping up. It's just someone said Coach is hilarious. They have the series. So you
Sure.
did the whole series of Coach.
I did. I met Barry Kemp years ago. I worked with Jerry Van Dyke up in Mackinac Island, Michigan. I was a kid. I opened for him at the Grand Hotel at the and private party for these realtors went great, 450 people. You got to come to LA. You got to come. Oh yeah, I want to come to LA, but I'm busy with all this stuff. Got to come. And we became friends. He introduces me to Barry Kemp. Barry Kemp produced, before Coach, we did a couple other shows, pilots and a couple things. Coach really hit, went for number. We all used to play tennis for 10 years together, doubles. It was at Barry's house. It was great fun, great experience. He's a great guy. Back in Detroit, I met Gary Shandling at a comedy club called Comedy Castle, Mark Ridley's Comedy Club. Got to come to LA, got to come to LA. Yeah, I'm coming to LA, and I come to LA, but I'm kind of busy with all this auto show and this and that. Gary and I became great friends. So
Gary Shandling, yeah.
Gary Shandling. So he had me do at the same time the It's Gary Shandling show on Tuesday, and on Friday I was doing Coach. So those were kind of the two that launched my warm-up career.
And that's how Phil Rosenthal became aware of you.
One night a couple things with Phil. One night at Coach, Phil pulled on my pant leg because I'm up in the bleachers and Phil's on the floor. So he didn't bend down to pull on it. He reached up to pull on it, just saying. And he goes, hey, do you want to do a pilot? Do you want to, how Phil can be very low key. Of course I want to do it. Yes.
Yeah.
And so we did Raymond, and the rest is history with Raymond. The other sweet thing at Coach, typically I don't go to dinner at these shows. Back in the day, we did a 3:30 at Coach, and we did a 7 o'clock. 3:30 would go an hour, like a one take with an audience, a live audience. The advantage at Universal, you could get a really easy live audience through the tour. So
right.
They rides, they see the studios. Do you want to see a show? Oh my God, they come in with their backpacks and everything else. And it went great. And so we would do a 3:30 show, break, go to dinner than the 7 o'clock show. So I'm at dinner and every department eats together. The camera guys all eat together. The people all eat together. The actors all have to eat together. Everybody eats only in their department. Warm-up guys, one guy, me, I'm sitting at the corner of the thing eating my salad. Phil and Alan Kirschenbaum, the writers, come eat with us. So, oh, wow, okay. So now you're sitting with these guys and they're the top dogs and you get to know them and they're sweet as can be. And they're, what else do you do? Oh, I work on Gary's. Oh, what? And so you're talking about that. And, you know, so it was a very nice way without me realizing it to get
in with them
in a very
and
organic way. And then, you know, and then always at every show, which I didn't know then, but sort of the top dogs like Phil Rosenthal or Alan get their own show.
right.
They go on and you do their show. So the thing starts.
Yeah. Mark, I just want to, just because I know we're going to run out of time and because that's so, just for people really,
Sure.
The showrunner is what he's talking about with Alan and Phil.
Correct.
The showrunner runs the show. So Chuck Lorre ran 2.5 Men and created that. So he's the general of the entire show of 130 people. They love you. These guys love you, and that's why you get hired on the show. I want to bring it back to Rose Raymond and just some of the more fun episodes, because I also want to solve a couple of mysteries, okay? One is about laughter, all right? Oh, sorry. I don't want to ignore these questions.
Okay.
Someone just asked, you wouldn't know this, and I don't know this.
Okay.
And so I'm going to read the exact question. Are you finally going to tell me how you got the news days shown in the episodes? That would be more for legal department, which I'll find out an answer. So it's not like I have the answer and I'm saying, you know, Ray on the show wrote for Newsday. And so I'm sure we have to get clearance. You have to get clearance for everything. That's why if you look in the background of most shows, you'll see that the products are generic. Right. So rather than have to go through the clearance and all this, like sometimes you would see on our show, Doug Flutie Flakes, because we were trying to promote his charity or whatever. I don't even know how that came about. And then also, you know, someone just made a good comment, which is, yes, when you go to a movie and the theater is empty, the movie isn't as funny as when you go to a movie and it's packed.
Well,
and so
with a comedy.
With a comedy, yes. Yeah. And so whenever you have a screening of anything, if you're trying to sell a comedy, you better sell it to a packed house, because the same group of people who think I'm a professional and I know what's funny and not funny, I'll tell a story another time about that. They are influenced by laughter. We are all human beings influenced by laughter. That's why you really want to see a comedy in a packed theater. Excellent point there. Excellent point. Yes, and I know Teresa has a big fan, says she still laughs at Rose Raymond. The good news for us is you don't remember half the jokes, so when you're watching it again, you're like, oh, you're laughing genuinely because you can't remember a lot, you know, of what you wrote. But Mark, just going back to the laughter question. Okay. You have a very distinct laugh. Okay. Yeah. Phil has a very distinct laugh. At some point, I have to watch an episode and give the time code, because people do hear two distinct laughs throughout the series. Yes. So it's either your laugh or Phil's laugh and a couple of errant laughs. Now, somebody asked, okay, well, what happens when you see, and I'll put up a few more pictures, Mark. There's a couple pictures where I'm standing in the audience. I actually, every once in a while, I would go in the audience so you could just take a break, right? And I would just talk to the audience live. And you see, it was fun for me. I love talking to talk to 200 people live was awesome. You just can't get too many laughs or Phil yells at you. So that's why I'd have to hand it back to you right away and scamper back down to the stage. So. But you will see microphones in the photo that I'm thinking about where I'm in the audience and you're at the top of the stairs, okay? Yeah. And there's microphones all over, so they are picking up your laughter. So the audience's laughter. So if somebody, and you do a thing in your act about don't shout out your name, because
your laugh, right?
Yeah, we're going to take it out. But if somebody sneezes or coughs, they go back in and they can take that out, but they just have to cover it, you know? They just have to cover it with other laugh. But 99% of what you're hearing at home is what the audience did in person.
That's
So there's no canned laughter. And we used to get complaint letters. I can't watch your show anymore. There's too much canned laughter. It's just not enjoyable. And one time, Mark, Phil called up one of those fans. This is before the internet was really, and so Phil called up that person who was in Colorado and said, "Hi, this is Phil Rosenthal." And she was like, "Oh, you got my letter. Okay. Great. It's about time so I can straighten this out." And Phil said, I don't want to, I hate to say it, but we don't use canned laughter. It's all live audience. And you do see our biggest problem after the series got established, the people laughed too hard. And I know that sounds crazy, but you would have a laugh and we'd have to wait for it to die down. Well,
there were tremendous laughs at Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah.
Gigantic laughs. I mean, but it was structured, and not occasionally every show. I mean, almost every scene. It was that.
It was that funny. And it seems like a good problem to have. But if all of a sudden you're sitting at home alone and you're watching the show and there's a 30-second laugh and you're going, it's funny, but it's not that funny. Right. And also, you can't have that you can't eat up 7 minutes of just laughter.
Well, I guess that was where editing comes in. I mean, look, quite frankly, I have been on shows long time ago, and not that long ago, but there was a show and the laughs were gigantic, but they left them in their full form. I felt when I watched it, they could have taken half of it out.
Okay. But they needed it.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not on that side.
Mark, just because we're going to, you're going to be on my podcast and we're going to talk for 7 or 8 hours. Our biggest problem always is talking for hours on end. So, Mark, just some of your random memories of some of the funnier moments on Raymond. Now, I know it's kind of tough for you because you're not sitting back, but you are, because you have to be like, okay, are they? So actually, let me go real succinctly. The show starts. You introduce the cast, and ladies and gentlemen, you introduce Ray. Ray comes out, tells some stuff.
Right. Well, I go out for a couple minutes, and we play back an episode of the show.
Yes, and so
what was very interesting at that show, I must say, because I had been on a lot of shows by then, but I don't think I had ever been on another show where during the playback for the audience, they were around the corner, Phil and Ray and the cat, whoever's watching, the writers, etc. But a lot of times I've been on shows where they'll do that playback.
Yeah.
And there's commotion. You hear them playing ping pong in the back, and they're at the craft service table.
Oh, the crew and people. Yeah.
Writers and everybody. They've seen the pilot. So or if they're playing back the pilot. But you guys were very precise in playing kind of a new episode that hadn't aired.
Yeah.
Everybody watched. That set the tone very early on. That level of, this is theater, we're going to focus in it. It's starting now.
Well,
it's important now.
Can I tell you what that was? And I think a lot of, I feel bad because I want to talk about fun stuff, but just to get a little bit inside baseball, it's my fault here. You are, and I think people, when they see these photos that I put up, they're a little surprised how much work. All of a sudden they finish a scene. There's Phil up with his script and 10 people around him. And it seems like, what are they saying? What is the thing? It's so precise. So in regards to playback, when Mark says playback, there's TVs over the audience bleachers. And so they'll play back an episode that has not aired yet. For us, because it is so precise, comedy is so precise,
right?
You are doing something called, you have to deliver the show. I think it was 22 minutes and 45 seconds to the second you deliver that show.
Correct.
So, Phil and Ray would be in the editing bay, and they would be shaving a few frames off of the end of a scene. Okay, Frank does this look, let's cut him off. And sometimes there'd be debates in the writer's room, in the edit bay, and Phil would call down the writer's room and send us send some writers up, and we'd watch two different takes. And anyone have a preference? Because obviously there'd been a discussion with Phil and Ray of which way they like it better. And then we would be the neutral. We wouldn't know if we're siding with Ray or Phil. We would just watch this thing. So now, when you're playing that in front of the live audience, you want to see the audience feedback.
There you go. So it was that care and that professionalism and that level of, I want this to be the greatest thing ever on TV, that made all the difference. It's all of those thousands of little moments that might pass someone else by. They just won't appreciate the detail.
Yeah. And so that's what you were saying when you were saying we're focused before, we're not playing anything. We genuinely are. This is our only chance to watch the episode in a theater. Right. This is the only chance to hear laughter because, you make the show and then it goes and you don't know if people are liking it. You see the ratings, but there's never the experience that you get when you make a movie. You get to go to a screening of that movie and you sit there and you're hopefully surrounded by laughter.
And you can do that over and over in different cities.
Yeah. And with TV, there's no feedback. Yeah.
May I say something about Chuck Lorre as well? I know we're talking about everyone like Raymond, but Chuck had a very unique thing that he does. He would watch the playback. And I had never seen that before. With a guy at that level, that successful.
Yeah.
Do that pretty much whenever he was there. Watch the audience, watch the show.
Yeah. And I think just real quickly for people that don't know, that aren't in the industry, because a lot of people didn't know who Phil was when I started this Instagram and Facebook thing, because he's just, you don't see that, it's the guy behind the show. Right. And so Chuck Lorre did he do Dharma and Greg? Yeah,
I first met Chuck Lorre at Roseanne, and then we did Dharma and Greg and 2.5 Men and Big Bang Theory and Mom and Mike and Molly and
so Mike and Molly, Mom, Big Bang Theory, 2.5 Men, then Dharma and Greg, Roseanne. He was on, right?
I don't know exactly his title there.
Yeah.
But
I don't want to get lost. I just want to say Chuck Lorre is a guy like Phil who ran the show and has run shows, etc., and cared about details. Okay, a couple good questions here, Mark. Do we ever do just one take? Now, the answer is no, never. You always do 2 takes, and here's why. Even if the first take, which is the first time the audience sees it as a surprise, even if it was like, oh my God, that you can't get a better performance. Let's just move on. The reason you don't do that is, and that's the exact phrase, by the way, you want to hear from the first assistant director. Moving on, everybody. Okay, moving on. Yeah. That means the cameras are moving. You're going to a different scene, and you're like, oh, okay. Because on some shows, or even on Raymond, occasionally, if someone didn't get, you'd be doing 3-4 takes, and you're like, oh boy. And the audience has.
You can drill in pretty deep, and then it's, they're an hour and a half.
Yeah. So moving on. So even if you have the perfect one take, you always do a safety in case something happens to the film. Now, they're not using film anymore. We shot film the entire time. Correct. But if you went back and they developed that and you're sitting in the edit bay and Phil is watching this one main shot that he needs and there is a big scratch on the film for 30 seconds, you can't reassemble you must do that safety. So, yes. And what you're seeing in the photos I'm posting, you're seeing notes, really, really minor tinkering notes that are really, really important in between takes. Correct. So you hear the live take and you'll hear, and again, the actors are unbelievable. And Mark, I'm going to, probably my next Instagram Live, I'll just do myself just to answer questions because I have so many questions for you and I feel bad because we're going to get into it deeper, but I'll have the whole cast on, that's around, at some point, we'll talk to Ray and we'll talk to everybody about it. But the people, and I say that because the cast is so unbelievably good. So when people see the notes, it's not, they're hitting it out of the park. It's just minor things. Sometimes you would have a 10-page scene. And so when they go through that scene, there might be a thing of like, Peter, don't forget to pause for a second there and let Marie counter, technical stuff that you're seeing in between takes.
Yeah.
So that's, kind of the minor stuff that you were able to do on that second take because the element of surprise is gone. Yes. So the scene, someone's asking about that. Now, Mark, do you remember when it was episode 100, wallpaper episode, when the car came crashing through the wall?
Oh, best.
Now, what was yours? Because I'm going to answer the question that someone's asking about doing that scene twice. Do you remember?
Every piece of dust I remember. I remember all of it.
And so what was your thought? Because you knew what was coming. The audience didn't. And just before, I'm going to tell a little side note story. When we're in the writer's room, Phil goes, somebody should film the audience reaction because they're going to be shocked to see a car. I mean, no one sees that coming. I completely forgot, and I had climbed up with the sound guys to take pictures looking down at the crash. So I had a wide-angle lens, and I could see the car, I could see the wall, and I see so the take happens. It's unbelievable, and it took about, I'm going to find out exactly, but about 20 minutes to rebuild the set.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, so I'm down there. I'm down now by the monitors. I've climbed down. The take happened. I've taken all my photos. I'm sitting there, and Phil, I'm talking to Tucker, and and they were like, "Oh no!" Tucker's like, "Did you film the audience?" I go, "Oh no, I totally forgot." And at that moment, Mike Duddy, who was Peter Boyle's stand-in, walks up to me and Tucker. I'm pretty sure it was Tucker, who one of the writers, and Tucker, and he goes, "Hey, I don't know if you guys want this, but I filmed the audience." Yes, I have to find that tape somewhere. I have that tape, but that I'm going to answer really quickly. I want your answer of your memories of it. We did film that twice. We filmed it once the day before, and once the night in front of the live audience. Correct. So we did have that twice.
Well, that's the other thing. When you talk about, when the question was, do you film it more than, or whatever that question was about filming more than once.
Do you ever film it just once was the question. Yeah.
However, to an audience member at a show, it may sometimes feel like they only do it once because I've been on shows like at Big Bang Theory a number of times where they'll go, we filmed this scene, but we're going to do it only once for the audience. So as an audience member, it may feel like, oh, they did it once, they're moving on. But they haven't seen the other 5 takes that it took to get to that point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, sorry. One thing also that we should mention, if you do go to a filming, sometimes they'll pre-film scenes. And so you'll just see the playback of that scene in front of you. And sometimes
they'll sometimes just play it back and sometimes just do it once. But I kind of know that in advance.
Yes. And sometimes, I'm saying this for the people watching who have never been to a live filming. Sure. When I went to the Seinfeld episode, they had a scene where they're walking down the street in New York, but they didn't film it yet. So Jerry and Jason Alexander just walked in front of us on the stage, and they were mic'd, but they were just talking. So they got the laughs of the conversation. But if you didn't know how it worked, you're like, how are they going to use that? It's just those guys are walking on stage. You can see the audience, all that stuff.
Well, they do that at Mom. They'll be in the car. Now, they're going to film the car. Sometimes it's ready to go.
Right.
But oftentimes, they'll just be sitting in 2 folding chairs with a steering wheel on a tripod. And they'll perform the scene. However, they are recording the response from the audience. Yeah. And that works.
Yeah.
Really well.
But by the way, just Teresa mentions the Bull episode. That was filmed on the back lot of Warner Brothers. There's a New York City street where they filmed that. Just like The Proposal to Amy, that was filmed on the New York City back lot, et cetera. So, Mark, when you were doing the warm-up for that car show and you knew the car's coming through, tell me what you were thinking then.
Well, first off, I was very excited about it. I just kind of knew that it's got to be one of the biggest performance pieces ever in front of a live audience. I mean, when you think about a car busting through a wall. So I knew it was coming. So you have this anticipation because you know the audience is literally going to be blown away. And I will say, after doing over probably 4,000 plus episodes of sitcoms, that had to be the single largest moment, I would say, of all time.
Yeah. In front of a live audience, you can't.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I've seen some great stuff and hilarious stuff and wild stuff,
Yeah.
But that, I mean, you're there, and all of a sudden, there's the real dirt and dust, and I don't know if it's from the set or they put that in by whatever, but it's happening, and it's happening now. It's happening live, and these people just it's jaw dropping. They're jaws dropping, literally.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Well,
that was unbelievable,
and
every ounce of it.
Yeah, and I think because just for an event, for the comedic thing, it's great, but just the shock of like, did a car just crash through stage 5? Like, what are we still in the sitcom? I mean, it's that big of a moment.
The advantage at Everybody Loves Raymond that you don't have at a lot of shows, the way the sets were configured with the bleachers, it was pretty tight, about as tight as you could make it, because obviously you have your sets and they're kind of, lined up, 3 or 4 sets, and then swing sets are typically around the corner or somewhere else or in the back, sets that are designed just for that particular episode. And then you have your 200 bleachers, and it was compressed as much as possible. I've been on other shows where it just feels a little too far away. It works, but you're at a party and the dance floor is too big. It just doesn't have.
I think, Mark, I'm going to stop you for 1 second, because I think what we're talking about, comedy is so precise and so fragile.
Yeah.
And so if someone who's not in the business just looks at the stage and goes, okay, well, this seems good. Well, you as the performer go, just 10 feet closer. Really? 10 feet? You don't want more room to, I kind of want to be on top of the,
It's a feeling.
Yeah.
I heard Jerry Weintraub say about Elvis, he told me 2 things. One, I don't want any VIPs in the first 15 rows, and I want the place full. That's what he wanted.
Elvis Presley.
Elvis Presley. So there you go. That says it all. You don't want VIPs, which we always have, in the first 15 rows because we only have 8 rows.
Yeah.
And the place full. And it makes all the difference in the world. Because those particular episodes where there's like a big guest star or something, and there's sort of extra people on stage and they're supposed to be, and they're kind of in the, where they're supposed to be with the fire marshal, and it's kind of really jamming.
Yeah.
They're always great.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you go into a comedy club and they have really high ceilings and there's a bar in the distance and the audience, we have big table, round table, and you're just like, you need that compressed energy. Mark, I don't want to run out of time. I'm inviting you back already. I'm going to force you to, I hope I can get you to laugh, because there's we're not trying to keep a secret of who's laughing in that show. It's Mark or it's Phil. Those are the two.
I thought the show was funny. I'm not just there.
No, you're laughing. I'm just saying you have such a distinct laugh, and you're in the audience.
And I want them to be in it. And that's my thing. Forget your troubles. Forget your worries. We're all in this together. We're going on this journey, and you're going to love it. And we couldn't do this without you. So that's kind of the mission, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, Mark, there's so many other moments of the show that you could recount, but we would sit here for 10 hours.
Right.
And so what I don't want to do is I don't want to get cut off and all of a sudden we're in mid-sentence.
Sure.
But is there anything else before we jump? And some people are asking some great, I'm going to come on live. By the way, is this a good time for people? Sorry, Mark, to ask while you're here, but
okay.
For an Instagram live, as you know, when you have to try and figure out, okay, you have an audience in Australia, you have an audience in England, you have New York is a big core audience, So what time of day and what day of the week? Sunday is a very good time. you're able to be on, and I'm hoping that we can get other people on at the same time. So I'm just kind of throwing out that
Is
to
this
people
time for the podcast or for the show?
for just to go Instagram Live, and I'm going to have you come on Facebook Live also, Mark. Sorry, but you're booked for the next month. Yeah,
I
and
have plenty of time right now.
yeah, Mark, is there anything specific, because we have about 6 minutes, 4 minutes?
There's so many memories from Raymond. I mean, I remember walking through the audience one time, and a lady asked me, "Are we allowed to laugh?" I mean, not, they thought they had to be quiet, like it was a. I remember one time, number of times at the craft service table. One time, Peter Boyle came up, and
Craft service table is where you eat your food, everybody.
yeah, I'm sorry, and I gave him a compliment that I said, "Boy, the minute you walk out, I just started laughing in that because I would get there early and watch the run through," and he looked at me in a serious way, but he was joking, and he said, "Go to hell." But I cracked up laughing. So I'm on another show a couple days later. Somebody gives me a compliment, and I go to them. I stole this line, and it worked. Thank you.
I was going to say that is a risky line.
I see him the next week. I don't go looking for him. I just run into him back there, and I said, "Peter, I stole your joke, but." I said, I gave you a compliment. You said, "Go to hell." And I thought it was funny, and I used it. He said, "Oh, it's an oldie but goodie." I remember him saying it's an oldie but goodie.
Oh, that's great. I
remember running into Brad at that same craft service table, and I gave him a little compliment about how funny something was that he did, which I genuinely thought was funny. And he screamed, "Louder!"
Oh, that's classic.
So many. I mean, there's so many great.
Well, Mark, before we have to say goodbye, the family feeling on Raymond. Now, you've been on a lot more shows, and you always kept it professional. So I think we would ask you to do everything with us, and you were very professional. And some stuff you did, meaning you always had a very professional demeanor. Like, this is my job, and this is. But at the same time, we had a very friendly set. Phil and Ray set the tone of it was family. If you had complaints, go to Phil and he'll straighten them out. And, there was really a very good vibe from what I've heard on other shows and other shows that I've worked on where, oh my gosh, the people don't get along and this is this and that guy hates this person. They can't be in the same room together. And, we still see each other all the time. So did you feel that as a statistical outlier? Was that odd to you, or was that?
Well, if you're in a family and it's a good family, you're comfortable and you feel the love and you feel the respect and you feel a genuine that people, there's someone to talk to or ask a question to, or people care. They care. And I think it was that level of care that was not only off stage, that clearly was on stage and was really the through line of the whole series, was that level of care. In terms of what goes on in other shows, the truth is, people make fun of me, "Oh, you don't ever say anything about the other." The truth is, I get there at a particular, I get there early, 1 o'clock, watch a run through at 2. Then they all disappear and go eat and go to their writing room. And then we do the show, let's say at 6, and I'm just there. I'm not involved in a way, the same way that you may be as a writer, where you're there 5 days a week and you're
Right.
12 hours a day. I have that level of.
Yeah. Mark, we're down to 30 seconds.
Okay, sure.
So, yeah, and I would expect, because yes, you have a different thing. You're there 1 day a week.
1 day a week for a given amount of hours, and it's pretty much just about the show. Just about the show
and getting it done. And we obviously have spent a lot of time together, as friends. And so I just know that I personally am telling you from stories I've heard of other, things.
Well, you didn't feel that there was any dysfunction.
Yes.
Dysfunction.
And it's like any other show, any other business where you have 130 people. Some people get along better than others. It wasn't like this thing. So, Mark, in the final 9 seconds, I'm going to invite you back.
Thank you so much. I
Just
really enjoyed every minute. You're the best, and you're a great friend, and you're very good at this.